Assalamualaikum, my name is Nushaira binti Muhammad Ali, ranting number 279536. I will start the presentation with the introduction. The source of national income collected from the people is divided into two, namely zakat and taxes. As a Muslim, it is our duty to pay the tax that have been set by the government, and for those who are Muslims, paying zakat is also an obligation that needs to be fulfilled. The purpose of this study is to give exposure to our respondent about the importance of planning and calculating zakat and taxes in order to know the true value that needs to be paid. As a smart business owner, they can actually plan their taxation strategically to pay the minimum tax possible based on the law. Next, definition of zakat. Zakat can be defined as pure growing, blessing and praiseworthy, while in terms, zakat is the issuing of a certain portion of property to be given to certain asnaf who are entitled to receive it after fulfilling the conditions set by the Sharia. Generally, zakat is divided into two types, namely zakat fitrah and zakat and property. Zakat fitrah is obligatory on every Muslim who is able with the conditions that have been set. The certain rate is 1 bushel of rice or equivalent to 2.5 kg. Zakat fitrah can be paid in the month of Ramadan, which starts on the 1st of Ramadan until the 1st of Shawwal before the prayer of Hari Raya Aidil Fitri. While zakat on property includes zakat on gold and silver, zakat on business, and zakat on livestock. Zakat on property can be paid at any time, and the rate of zakat on property is 2.5% of the total property. Zakat is the fourth pillar of Islam and is one of the most important elements in upholding Islamic law. The obligation to pay zakat is clearly stated in the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad SAW. The obligation to pay zakat has various positive socio-economic objectives, not only for zakat recipients but also for zakat payers and society. In general, zakat can strengthen the social security system, and it is an initial step that should be handled well to lead to a perfect Islamic economic system. Next, definition of tax. Tax can be defined as money or property that must be paid by the household sector and firms to the government. Taxes are the main component in the source of income for the government. According to Kamus Dewan, tax is a payment imposed by the government on individuals, corporations, companies and goods for national expenses. In general, the taxation system is a very important economic instrument and one of the biggest contributors in generating income for the development of a country. In Malaysia, the taxation system is administered by the Inland Revenue Board (IRB), which is a taxation authority authorized by the government to administer direct taxes. In addition, the IRB is also responsible for the task of assessments, collection and law enforcement of real estate profit tax, petroleum tax and stamp duty. The IRB's role is to ensure the taxpayers comply with the law. Next, the differences between zakat and tax. First, the difference in terms of regulations. Zakat is a decree from Allah SWT and cannot be changed. Meanwhile, taxes are decreed by the government and changed with the pass of times and era. Second, in terms of payers, zakat is only imposed on Muslims who have property that exceeds nisab and haul. They are obligated to pay zakat, such as zakat on property, zakat on business, and zakat fitrah. While taxes are imposed on all citizens regardless of religion, poor or rich. They are taxed through various types of tax such as income tax, gate tax and business tax. Third, in terms of collection and distribution, zakat is collected from the wealthy to be distributed to the poor and needy, as well as other zakat beneficiaries such as amil, fisabilillah and debtors. Meanwhile, tax are collected from the people and used by the government for the country's development, such as building hospitals, schools and roads. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum Dr. and hi everyone. My name is Nur Ayrin Shafiqah binti Awang. Batch number is 279709. So I will explain the background of Miss Yes Mazana. The respondent that we will interview to calculate zakat and the tax planning is Miss Yes Mazana binti Mat Yunus. So she is 45 years old. She live in 70 Lorong Madu, Batu 30 Jalan Sintok, Shanglun, Kedah. Now she runs a cafeteria business at Cafe Proton and hold a position as a manager. So she already got married 23 years old ago and have two daughters, which are Nur Akila Farhana, who is 9 years old, and Alia Farisha, who is 50 years old. The parents of Miss Yes Mazana both have retired from government agencies. However, her father already passed away 4 years ago. Miss Yes Mazana is the eldest child in her family. So she inherited a traditional Malay house which has a current value of 150,000 in Changlun, and the assets are getting from Far Aid process from her late father's estate. Now she is renting out the house for 700 per month. So her mother is currently staying together, and she has been given 300 ringgit on a monthly basis to her mother. Sadly, her mother was diagnosed as a cancer survivor, and she spent almost 10,000 in the year to 2022 for medical treatment in a private hospital. So about financial information of our interviewer. So Miss Yasmazana worked as a manager for her cafeteria business, which is located at Inasis Proton UUM. So she gains 6,000 per month for her income. For retirement, she have a purpose contribute 20% 20% of her income to Kumpulan Wang Simpanan Pekerja or Employee Provident Fund, which is EPF, and her current EPF balance is 60,000. So now Miss Yes Mazana has also contribute 250 ringgit per month to Takaful Protection to contribute protection policy, and is entitled to a total coverage of 350,000, and the current cash value for the plan is 10,000 ringgit. So in addition, she also pays Zakat 1,000 per year. At present, Miss Yes Mazana and her family are residing in their own double-story house in Changlun, which was purchased by her 4 years ago. Her purchased this house. So she purchased this house 200,000 ringgit using Islamic home financing, which was attached with MRTT for a 25 years period at a 7.5% profit rate per annum. So the current value of the house is that area is rate at 500,000. Nextly, Miss Yes Mazana has two cars that need to be paid for every month. She drives a Toyota Hilux that cost her 130,000 when she bought it last 4 years ago. She paid 80,000 as a down payment, and the balance was secured by nine-year Islamic hire purchase financing with a 3% profit rate. So the car value at 100,000. So the second car is a Produa Myvi, which was purchased in 2021 at 35,000. She took 30,000 Islamic higher financing with 2.3% profit rate for 9 years. So the current value of car is 32,000. The list of asset which current value owned by Miss Yes Mazana, she has three current value asset, which is saving account 30,000 ringgit, a tabung haji 20,000 ringgit, and ASB or unit trust, which is 25,000 ringgit. So nextly is a list of expenses by Miss Yes Mazana. For a grocery, she spent 5,000 ringgit per year. For dining out, she spent 1,200 per year. Utilities bill is 2,000. Telephone bill is 1,200. For Uni5, she spent 1,000. For Astro or TV satellite, she spent 1,200. For clothes, she spent 1,000. For children education, she spent 4,800. So nextly, for the personal expenses, she spent 1,000. And next is vacations. She spent almost 3,000 per year. And for the Takaful and road tax, she spent 1,000 per year. And for the car maintenance, she also spent 1,000. And lastly, she spent petrol, which is 2,500 ringgit. per year. So that's all the financial information and background of interviewer. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Atira Munira binti Ahmad Asri and my matric number is 281213. Okay, I will present about the cash flow and network statement of Mrs. Zana. Okay, a cash flow statement is a financial statement that provides information about the cash inflow and outflow of a business or individual during a specific period. It presents a summary of the sources and the use of cash. So, in this section, it will show us the cash flow of Mrs. Zana. Okay, the table above shows the cash flow statement of Mrs. Zana, and as we can see, the statement shows a positive amount which is surplus. She achieved a surplus amount of RM5,937 after deduction between the total inflow and outflow. Okay, this shows that Mrs. Zana managed her expenses carefully and efficiently. Besides that, the difference between the amount of inflow and outflow is not too significant and can still be controlled. Okay, next we go for the network statement of Mrs. Zana. A network statement, also known as a balance sheet, it is a financial document that provides a snapshot of an individual's or a company's financial position at a specific period. It presents a summary of assets, liabilities, and equity, which allow for the calculation of the net worth or owner's equity. In this part, it will show you the net worth statement of Mrs. Zana for the end of 2022. Okay, the net worth will represent the residual interest in the asset of Mrs. Zana after deducting all her liabilities. As we can see from the above table, the total asset that Mrs. Zana has is 1,834,000 and for her liabilities amounted to 275,629. From the above statement, we can say that Mrs. Zana has a positive net worth because her assets are more than her liabilities. It shows a good condition since her asset can cover for her debt or liabilities.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nur Shafiza binti Samsudin. I will continue for the zakat and tax computation for Mrs. Zana. Based on the statement above, we can conclude that the total zakat payable for Mrs. Zana is 2,569 after totaling out the amount of zakat on income and zakat on will. As stated in the background, before this, Mrs. Zana already paid zakat which is 1,000 annually. So, this zakat paid needs to be deducted from the total zakat payable and the amount of zakat due is 1,569. It means that in the next year, she only needs to pay 1,569 instead of 2,569. Since zakat is a religious obligation, it is important for Mrs. Zana to plan her finance accordingly. She must allocate a certain amount every year to fulfill his zakat obligation. By making a budget for zakat, she can ensure that she has the necessary and sufficient funds to pay the zakat for the next year. Next, based on the tax planning calculation that has been done, the total tax that needs to be paid by Mrs. Zana is 996, which was calculated by separate assessment. This amount is obtained after the deduction of the relief that has been set by the LHDN. If seen in the statement, the total income of Mrs. Zana is 18,400 and deducted with a total deduction of 29,000 and get the chargeable income amount to 51,400. So, the total tax after making the calculation according to the rate is as much as 1,996. But before this, Mrs. Zana has paid zakat 1,000 per year and in tax calculation, we should reduce this relief. After calculation, the total tax that need to be paid was 996 annually. Since before this, Mrs. Zana has never paid tax, so the amount to be paid next year is 996. For tax planning, the smaller the chargeable income, the smaller the percentage of tax rate charged and the smaller the amount of tax that needs to be paid. If seen from the tax planning on Mrs. Zana, the rate charged is still considered okay. if reach a high rate, the amount of tax to be paid by Mr. Zana will also be high. So, we would like to suggest that in the upcoming years, Mrs. Zana can try to lower the tax rates in case she wants to further reduce the tax payment amount. Besides that, if her husband also needs to pay tax, better way is to calculate their tax based on the separate assessment. If calculate based on joint assessment, it will increase the amount of tax paying. Another suggestion is Mrs. Zana should be consistent in paying tax where she needs to ensure that tax is paid according to the period set by the LHDN so that there is no outstanding amount in the future. Thank you. That's all from me.
The last one is conclusion. In conclusion, this assignment has given many benefits and can add more knowledge about zakat and tax. Apart from revealing the definition of zakat and tax to business owner and explaining the difference between zakat and tax, we have also shown and explained the correct way of calculating zakat and tax to the interviewer. The importance of zakat in Islam can be summarized into three parts: moral, social and economic. From a moral point of view, zakat can foster awareness and fulfill the moral responsibility of the rich toward the poor and less fortunate by eradicating greed and selfishness. With this, zakat can create a caring, loving and fair society. In addition, the importance of zakat from a social point of view is that its main objective is to eradicate poverty in the community. Zakat tries to bridge the significant social gap between the rich and the poor in society and create a spirit of brotherhood among Muslims. Next, from the point of view of Islamic economics, zakat can prevent the accumulation of unfair wealth in society. This can be avoided by ensuring property and wealth are distributed fairly. Taxation is an economic instrument that is very important for a country to obtain revenue or income. The revenue from this tax is used by the government to administer and manage the country and also for its development. Therefore, individuals who work or earn more than the prescribed value must pay zakat and tax. This is to clean our property and get blessing in this world and the hereafter. This also clearly shows that zakat and tax can improve the standard of living of an individual and a community. It is expected that every individual pay intention and make plans for zakat and tax when managing the income earned. That's all from us. Thank you.